Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Consultation Room Podcast. Today, we are diving into the world of hay fever, which is also known as allergic rhinitis. If you've ever found yourself sneezing, rubbing your eyes, battling with a runny nose during the allergy season, you're not alone. Hay fever affects millions of people worldwide and can make life very miserable for anyone who's suffering from allergies. But don't fear, because we're here. So we will be exploring the causes, the symptoms, and the treatment options for hay fever. And also discuss how to manage your symptoms so that you can breathe easy, enjoy the great outdoors once again. And whether you're a seasoned hay fever veteran or you're just starting to experience allergy symptoms for the first time, this episode is for you. So grab a tissue, settle in, and let's tackle hay fever together. So just as a start, hay fever. What is hay fever?
So hay fever is an allergy response, basically. So it's when your body, your immune system, becomes contact with an irritant and causes an allergic response. So this irritant can be caused by different things, but mainly caused by pollen. So it can be caused by pollen from grass, from trees, from weeds. So most of the time, some people have seasonal hay fever, but sometimes it can be all year round. So when it is all year round, it is usually caused by different irritants. So there are some irritants such as dust mites, mold spores, like pet dandies, when you're allergic to pets. So these are all causes of it that makes you get the hay fever symptoms. So you may find out that maybe during winter time, you may have some hay fever symptoms. It's not due to maybe a pollen count, but it could be due to something else. Could be due to dust mites, for instance. And when it comes to hay fever, obviously the more the pollen count is, the higher it is, the worse the hay fever is. And that's why we normally say it's usually worse around summertime. Because during summertime, around June, July, the pollen count is really high. So that's when you find that a lot of people have hay fever and the symptoms is usually really bad. So when the pollen count is usually at its highest, we normally advise patients not to go out. So you may ask, what are some of the symptoms of hay fever? Chido's already mentioned some. So we'll start off. I usually start off from head to the bottom. So you do have the itchy eyes. You do have sometimes runny eyes as well, or your eyes may be red. And then you may come to your nose, where you may have runny nose or blocked nose, or sometimes even itching. And then you may have some itchy throat as well, which can be very irritating, as you may know. Yes, or sometimes you may get itchy ears as well. Some people may develop loss of smell, which everybody's different, but not majority of people. You may get headache or sinus pressure as well. You may get sneezing, which is a lot more common, and maybe some coughing as well. Because hay fever causes all these symptoms, you may find out that you're really tired, you're not sleeping too much, so you feel really tired all the time, which is normal. Yeah. Maybe a bit of earache. Yeah, I think a bit of earache because of the sinus pressure, so some people may present with that. I have mentioned a few of the causes. Trudy, is there anything else you may feel causes hay fever?
So hay fever, as we have said, is normally caused by sort of allergic reaction to something, to an allergen. So different allergens, as you've mentioned, Steph, would normally cause it. Some people even react to things like perfumes, smokes. So it's just about, I think when it comes to hay fever, it's just about finding out what your trigger is. Because with hay fever, what I found, I suffer from hay fever, but what I've actually found with myself is my triggers change as well. So like initially it was just pollen, you know, as far as there is pollen in the air, I'm going to have an allergic reaction or hay fever reaction. But then it's got to more like smoke. For me personally, smoke really triggers my hay fever, and that's why we said it's a, you know, year-round condition. It doesn't have to just happen during sort of pollen season, because different triggers would cause a flare up in hay fever. So things like really harsh perfumes, I'll just find myself sneezing, you know. Any strong perfumes will cause my hay fever to flare up. And a lot of people who I've spoken to have said the same. So they suffer from allergies to sort of smoke, perfumes. Also, personally, again, at cold weather, I don't know why I'm in England. Cold weather actually triggers my hay fever. So, you know, when you wake up and you go out and it's that crisp cold, that kind of like just, that really causes my hay fever symptoms to, you know, to basically flare up. Those are to be fair, you have mentioned most of the very common causes of hay fever, or things that could trigger hay fever, but it's more about finding out what is your trigger. And again, as I said, it changes in terms of like your triggers can change every time, they can progress. So you could be just, I don't know, just you're allergic to pets, and then the next season you realize, hold on, like now, when I'm outside, you know, in the grass, I am getting hay fever symptoms. So different triggers will affect different people differently, but also people will develop different symptoms differently as well.
So because it's like an immune response to an allergen, who are some of the people that can develop hay fever?
So to be fair, a lot of people, we have said millions of people suffer from hay fever, but because it's an immune response, you will find a lot of people who suffer from diseases that would compromise the immune system will suffer a lot more from these symptoms. And then people who have things like, I mean, when you have say cold and flu season, you might find that maybe you're having a lot more of the hay fever symptoms. But again, it's to do with your immune system, because if your immune system is not strong enough, it will likely flare up your hay fever symptoms. To be fair, that I can only think of anyone who is immune. As long as you're immunocompromised, you're likely to suffer from hay fever. I don't know if Steph, you have any specific groups that you can think of top of your head.
Yeah, I find out that, like, you know, when some patients who have eczema and also asthma, they also tend to develop hay fever, like a lot more. That's what I've realized. Like, when they have these two conditions, they're more prone to hay fever. And sometimes, like with the asthma patients, they do need to be careful, because sometimes the hay fever symptoms can make their asthma a lot more worse. So they just need to be careful there. But that's something that came across, that most people with like asthma and eczema tend to develop hay fever as well.
I suppose that is correct, because with asthma patients, they also have triggers. So something could trigger your asthma, but also exacerbate your hay fever, especially if you're a hay fever sufferer. Or you might get this almost the signs and symptoms of hay fever. So it does make sense. Well, speaking of, is there any cure for this? Like, is there, like, and I get this a lot, like, this happened last year, it's happened this year, can I just cure this? Steph?
We hear this all the time. Honestly, hay fever, you cannot cure it. It's not a serious disease. It is a disease where you use lifestyle and some medications to help you relieve these symptoms, but it's not something you can cure. But I understand the hay fever can be very irritating. It's so annoying, very awful. Like, we all experience it, but there isn't a medication that would cure your hay fever. That's something that we need to stop, you know. But there are some measures that we can take to help you prevent it and to help you, you know, relieve these symptoms, to make you have like a better, you know, lifestyle. So let's go through some of the things. Let's go through some of the preventative measures. Then when we're done, we can go through some of the medications that can help, you know, because as we said, you know, hay fever usually occurs during high pollen count. So the most obvious thing that we would say is obviously to avoid going out when the pollen count is high. Some people might find that very annoying because when it's summer, you want to go out to enjoy the weather, you know, because you've been indoors mostly all the time, like during winter time, which can be quite frustrating because during the summer you want to go enjoy, you know, but when you do go, that's when, like, you know, the hay fever symptoms do start. One thing that I will say, because I, you know, suffer from hay fever, what I usually do, I usually use Vaseline. When you see me during summer, I look very oily.
Vaseline.
I put Vaseline like around like my nose. Yes, I put it around my nose because it's really good. Like what it does is that the Vaseline like traps like the pollen so it doesn't enter your system. So yeah, Vaseline around the nose, honestly, it helps. Or I put it around my eyelashes.
No, your eyelashes. We're trapping everyone.
Honestly.
What happened to good old sunglasses?
Okay, most of the time.
The lab goggles.
Yes, I do that when I'm going out. That's what I was going to say. I do the Vaseline when I'm like inside, and then like obviously I wear the sunglasses when I'm going out. But the Vaseline really
helps. Guys, if anyone has
honestly.
any lab goggles that you can spare, please send them to Stephanie because I think she needs the lab goggles.
You don't understand. My hay fever is so bad. Like my eyes become so red, itchy, really, really, really bad. So like during summer, I do everything I can just to help me.
Have to do what you have to do.
I don't like that.
What you have to do. What works for you will not work for anyone else. But listen.
Yeah.
But no, I see that. It makes sense. Vaseline will trap. It's a barrier, isn't it? It's like a barrier cream. So
yeah. Exactly. And obviously closing like the windows and stuff. I know it's hot during the summer, but most of the time I close the window, get like a fan, and when you do get a fan as well, sometimes get an air filter just to trap those pollens as well if it is inside. That usually helps. Usually your vacuum cleaner as well, make sure there's like a filter in there as well just to help, you know, clean up those dust mites and those pollen inside. Washing as well, like washing quite frequently really helps as well because if there's like any like allergens on you, it usually washes that away. So that's something I would do. I don't know if you have any more preventative measures, but these are like my key things that I normally do.
To be fair, like as long as the pollen count is high, I avoid being out there. But as I said, my hay fever is triggered by weird things like the pollen count can be so high, I'll be fine. As soon as they smoke, I'm done. As soon as there's dust. So it's also avoiding these things. So things like just dusting your house. You know, we all know that, you know, as you know, as long as you have a house, you know, you live for a week, you literally just run your hand, you know, your finger through it, you will come up with dust. So we can gather dust quite easily. So it's very important that you clear off the dust from your house, from anywhere you're working, because this could be some of the things that's actually causing your hay fever to flare up, or is causing your hay fever symptoms to be quite severe. So just make sure we're all keeping clean, okay? We're all keeping clean and dustless. And also sometimes it's also what you wear, because we also know that clothes can also have a lot of dust and things like that. So if you're constantly wearing things like that, you know, the same coat you've been wearing from 2021, you haven't washed it until today, it's got all kinds of dust, all kinds of smell. That is possibly what's causing your hay fever symptoms to be quite severe, or a flare up even. So it's just literally just doing things that will try avoid things that trigger your hay fever. So what I think most important thing is finding out what your triggers are, and then avoiding these triggers, because these are what will cause, the side effects, the symptoms of hay fever, as well as, of course, worsening of hay fever. Now, when it comes to treatment, so we've talked about ways to avoid it, right? So these are ways that you can, of course, just put into your daily life, just to at least avoid a worsening of hay fever. What about treatment, though? So there is no cure. Is there treatment? Because we all know in science, in health, there might not be a cure, but there's going to be a treatment, or at least something to manage your hay fever symptoms. So what are the common treatments, at least over the counter to start with, treatments over the counter that anyone can buy to relieve some of the hay fever symptoms?
As Trudy rightly said, you can't cure it, but you can't use some remedies that are available over the counter. So you just need to speak to your pharmacist when you want to, get something for your hay fever. So these include, I'll start off with the antihistamines, which come in different forms. So we do have like the tablets, we do have like the pills, we do have some that come in like the eye drops, the nasal drops as well, the nasal sprays. So these will help you relieve the symptoms. So when it comes to the antihistamine, the tablets and the liquids, one thing I will say is that they do come in different types. So we do have the sedating antihistamines, and we do have the non-sedating antihistamines. I usually recommend the non-sedating antihistamines to my patients, because, as the name suggests, when the sedating ones may cause you to be drowsy. So you don't want to be feeling drowsy maybe during the day, especially if you do drive as well. It will impair your driving. It will impair the activities that you do during the day. So I would recommend a non-sedating one. Some patients do go for the sedating one, especially like during nighttime, just to help them sleep. Because, sometimes when you have the hay fever, you feel really tired. So the sedating one taken at nighttime may be beneficial for those sort of people. We usually have antihistamines for your eyes, like when you do have like itchy eyes. So these will help relieve that symptoms, make your eyes feel a lot more better. We do also have the nasal sprays as well for like any sinus pressures and the itchy nose and any itchy throat as well. These nasal sprays and nasal drops do help as well. When it comes to, there are some remedies as well which the GPs can recommend, such as like steroid treatments. So we do have like steroid nasal treatments, nasal sprays, which help as well relieve the sinus pressure in your nose. Some people find that very beneficial. So you may have heard of some like nasal cord, that spinal cord, that sort of thing. Some GPs do recommend that. But most of the time, when it comes to treatment, is basically, there's not one that would say, oh, this is the treatment that is on top of every treatment. It's basically trying different ones that work for you. Because what I realize is that, like, my brother may take maybe a non-sedating one, like loratadine, and it works for him. But then I may take it and it doesn't work for me. So I may have to try something else. It's about trying different antihistamines
what works best for you,
to see what works best for you. Yeah, and what you may realize is that maybe you may take him and it may relieve your symptoms for one day. So, but then the next day you still have that symptom. So that would mean that you need to continue taking it. So what I realize is that sometimes during the summertime, I take it all throughout that period because I know my symptoms are really bad, so I take it all throughout that period. But there are some people where they may only like take it for a couple of weeks and then the symptoms are better and they don't need to continue taking it. So as I said, everyone is different, so you just need to try and see what works best for you. Basically, even sometimes if you get some eye wash as well, just to help clear your eyes as well, so speak to your pharmacist and see what is available for you. Julia, have I missed off any over-the-counter?
I think you've mainly said all the ones that is pretty much available over the counter. I don't know if you've mentioned the nasal saline sprays and drops. So there is that. So the good thing with sort of like nasal saline sprays and drops is that they actually don't have medication as such. It's just sort of isotonic water or hypertonic water. So it is just basically supposed to help mainly with sort of like the congestion and irritation during hay fever, which is actually something that I really highly recommend to most of my patients. And a lot of them do say it works. So nasal saline sprays and drops are actually also a treatment that you can use for hay fever. But I think everything else you have mentioned, and just very quickly, I think we should talk about antihistamines. The reason I say this is because that's the most commonly bought over-the-counter medication for hay fever. I don't know if you've realized that as well. Like most people would go for the tablet, like, I just took antihistamine, I had hay fever. So it's quite common to take antihistamines. And most people are aware of antihistamines. So I think let's just very quickly talk about them. And starting with the name, antihistamines. So histamines is what the body produces as an immune response to an allergen. So an antihistamine is supposed to almost counter that. So to try and tackle that histamine that the body is producing. And as Steph said, there is some sedating ones and non-sedating ones. So like just the non-sedating ones, let's just name the most common ones, just so people are aware, because you would think, I feel like hay fever is something that is so common that when people come to the pharmacy, I'm almost certain like they know what they're looking for. Like they come and where are the antihistamines? And I'm like over there, and they come and say which one is best for me. And I'm thinking, okay. It's almost like I've assumed that they should know what is best for them, because it's like paracetamol and ibuprofen, isn't it? It's quite common, but most people don't actually know which ones are sedating, which ones are non-sedating, which ones are available over the counter, which ones do they need to get prescription for. So like the non-sedating, as you've mentioned, Steph, is something like loratadine, which is non-sedating. And also it is one of the most common ones that you can get pretty much anywhere. It doesn't have to even be a pharmacy. You can get, I think hay fever treatment you can get quite readily in a lot of places. So again, there's also cetirizine, which is non-sedating or to be honest, there's been studies have said it can be sedating, but the list is very, very low sedating. So it is considered non-sedating, to be honest. And I don't know, Steph, about you, but I've taken loratadine and cetirizine, and I personally am normally fine. I'm never feeling drowsy or anything. I don't know about you.
Yeah. Both of them, I'm usually fine on them as well. I've been good on them.
That's true. And then there's now fexofenadine, which we never used to be available over the counter. So fexofenadine, I think the low strength of 120 milligrams, you could only get that on prescription. But just very recently, like in the last few years, they have made it available over the counter, which is good, I think, because I don't know about you, but I would send a lot of my patients like, oh no, you have to get something stronger like fexofenadine from the doctors. But now at least that something like that is available. That is available over the counter. They can get that. Those are, I think, the most commonly available over the counter. Like if you go to most chemists, you are likely to get at least one of these three over the counter. And then there's of course the sedating ones, which is, I think it's only one, isn't it? Yes. Over the counter.
So today we've got clofenamine.
So, Puritan has been there for donkey years. I feel like when I was growing up, I heard about Puritan so many times, and I think my association with Puritan was even wrong.
Honestly,
I'm not sure.
Listen, my kids even know Puritan.
I feel like my association with Puritan was a bit. Mum says, "Oh, we need some Puritan." I'm like, "Oh no,
Honestly.
I'm really sick for me to take Puritan," you know. So it is one of the more sedating ones. Now, also, I think it's worth mentioning that the non-sedating ones, you are likely to just take them one a day, and they should relieve your hay fever symptoms. Whereas the non-sedating ones, something like Puritan, you can take a lot more in a day. You can take up to 4 tablets in a day, is it? Or within, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. 4
So, but again, if it is causing you to be drowsy, that means your day's gone. You're gonna be sleepy like all through the day.
You know,
so
sleeping the whole day.
It's one of those things. If you're having hay fever symptoms and it's a weekend, you don't need to go to work, you don't need to do anything. It might be worth considering something like Puritan, because at least that way you know that you are going to just be drowsy, but at least your symptoms are going to be they're going to be sorted. So it is worth mentioning that, I think. I don't know if you can think of any other sort of common antihistamine over the counter that maybe we haven't mentioned.
I'm not sure if this one is available over the counter for hay fever, but I know complexities, sometimes you can find it in sleeping tablets, but what some people do is that they also take that for their hay fever because it's an antihistamine. And I'm not going to mention some family members of mine who take it for hay fever because they feel like, it helps them with your sleep, and also, may help relieve your
It is available on the counter. But again, I think it depends where you're getting it, because a lot of places now are aware of like the use of it or misuse of it. So you might go to a pharmacy and they'll say no, they're not selling. So a lot of pharmacies have actually taken it off, like from the counters, and it's now behind the counters or in the dispensary where the pharmacist is. So there's a bit of a control as to who can buy it. And some pharmacies just will not sell it at all. So depending with, of course, what you're using it for, if it's become a habit where you're constantly like, can I just get that? I just need something to help me sleep. It's not a sleeping tablet, okay? So there is, especially if you're buying it over the counter. I mean, I know that you can get it on prescription for reasons of like, sleep, just problems with sleep, but over the counter it should not necessarily be used just for that. There is other things that you can use for that. So I think most importantly, just always have that chat with your pharmacist, healthcare professional, find out what is best for you. Have you had any myths, Steph?
So, well, not a myth, but what I would say, what I find is that when I'm in the UK, I tend to have hay fever, but then when I go to other countries, like even like some European countries, I don't have it. Or even when I go to Africa, I don't have it. Like, why is that? Like, I've always questioned it. Why is it that when I'm in the UK, that's the only time I have hay fever? I don't understand it.
It's the pollen. It's the pollen.
I don't know.
It's the pollen.
The pollen is too
the
much
pollen
in the
count
UK.
in the UK is mad. But see, that it's so weird. It's so weird that you said that, because you know how we say that it affects everyone differently and everyone has got different triggers. Now, for me, pollen is not really a trigger for me, but cold and smoke is that will take my hay fever to the next level. So you can imagine, like now when I go to my grandma, I mean, there's always a lot of smoke there. And then it's quite cold, actually, where my grandma lived. I know, surprising, Africa cold, how? But I actually, my symptoms, my rhinitis flares up. I don't sleep. It's so weird. Yeah. And like in the UK, especially like sort of like now, it's hay fever season, and a lot of people are like buying their antihistamines. I've not bought mine yet. I'm a trooper. I'm like, I'm still good. I'm still good. So it is one of those things. You're right. It can affect people. Again, it can be an all round thing where some people it's seasonally, where during pollen season, it will affect them.
Yeah.
Where other people, during other times of the year when there's other triggers, it will affect them. But have you had anything from anyone that is a bit weird or a bit just, like...
Not weird, but like, I think people just say, oh, hay fever is caused by hay.
Yeah.
The actual hay.
Yeah, I have.
Yeah, I don't know if you've heard of that.
And it gives you a fever. They say, I'm not
Okay.
going to get a fever because of the hay. Like they basically assume that it's actually caused by hay and you get a fever. Yeah.
Yeah, that's like one thing that I've heard. But I don't know. I'm trying to think of some of the other myths. And most of the time, maybe like flowers or like are the main causes of hay fever. What others? Can you think of any? I'm trying to.
What I've heard, and maybe something I've experienced as well a few times, is hay fever can almost make you allergic to everything. So you, like, for me, once I get a trigger, like say I just walk past someone, very strong perfume, from then on anything else will just cause me to sneeze and sneeze and sneeze. It will just basically cause my symptoms to just not go. And it's something I've heard, and it's something that I've actually experienced. So basically I suppose people with hay fever, or people who suffer from hay fever, are also quite sensitive to a lot of things like dust mites, other allergens. So if your trigger causes that flare up, it's likely that because you're sensitive to a lot of other things, so you don't even know, you might almost feel like now you're allergic to everything, for at least for the rest of the day, or even for a few days, like anything that sort of like you inhale or anything that you come close to, you will almost react to it. I don't know if it's happened to you, Steph.
Oh yeah, it does. I feel like it does happen. Once like something triggers my hay fever, I feel like everything else, it just rolls on. It just rolls on for me. Like, honestly. So I tend to like try and avoid it as much as I can. Like, as soon as I see someone holding flowers, I'm like running the other way. I'm like, that pollen in that flower is gonna start it off. Yeah, I tend to have that. Yeah. When it comes to summer, I try as much to watch out for those triggers that it causes me to start having hay fever symptoms. Yeah. Once it starts, that's it for me. That my whole summer's ruined.
You pop, you're still going to, do you know what I mean? Like it's one of those things. It almost doesn't stop. It almost doesn't stop. I've also heard from a few patients about certain foods causing their hay fever to be worse. This I've not experienced, but like some people say, like things like tomatoes or even bananas can actually make their hay fever worse. Now I did read a little bit about this, right? And I suppose because I was like, wait, hold on, like, because do you know what? Like, you actually speak to someone, and they're like, oh, maybe you should avoid the triggers, and she's like, yeah, but I've just realized sometimes bananas can cause my hay fever to be, to be a bit worse, and I'm thinking, I'm not sure that's hay fever, and when you hear about some foods causing hay fever to be worse, it kind of wants you to check on something. Like, hold on, is there something I'm missing here? So I think it's due to the cross-reactivity with pollen allergens in these foods that can actually cause the hay fever to almost worsen, or you feel like you're getting that flare up. So it is true, some foods can, but it's not necessarily the food, it's that cross-reactivity of people with pollen allergens. So this can actually cause your allergies to feel worse than they are, basically. Yeah.
I don't know if you've heard this before, it just came across. Like, you know how some people use like honey to help relieve their cold and flu symptoms? Like, some people just say honey reduces their hay fever symptoms.
I've heard of it. Like, I've heard, like, it's especially the old women. The older women, they come and say, I'm going to buy some honey from Tesco's. That's going to help me with the hay fever. I'm like, do you, hun? But I've heard it.
I mean, like, as I said, whatever works for you, that's the most important thing. Yeah, whatever works for you to help you relieve those symptoms, Yeah.
But I think it's also worth mentioning that hay fever, as much as it affects us, it can affect pets too. So if you have some pets and you're noticing that they're experiencing certain sort of allergies, like itching, sneezing even, or even watery eyes, it could be that your pet is actually having hay fever symptoms. Yeah. Is there anything we haven't touched on hay fever?
I think we've done the
have
symptoms, the causes, treatment and management. Yeah. I mean, hay fever, as you said, it's not like a serious disease. It is minor, but very irritating. That's it, honestly.
But,
So once you can,
but if it's causing some sort of disruption to your daily life, just seek professional help. Instead of just buying over the counter treatments as a remedy. If you feel like you're not able to see, because your eyes are so watery, it could be causing something else. So if you feel like it's actually getting in the way of life, please seek professional help. The good thing is you're not alone. A lot of people suffer from hay fever. There's 2 people here who already suffer from hay fever. So it is something that affects a lot of people. But there is treatment for it, and there's ways to manage it. And I think also just finding your triggers, isn't it?
Yeah. It's actually thought of something. So there is something else as well. So we've talked about the treatment where you use antihistamines, the nasal decongestors, steroid nasal sprays, those sort of things. But there is something else where some GPs may refer you to specialists for immunotherapy. So this is when your hay fever is really bad and the treatments are not helping. So immunotherapy is when they slowly introduce the allergen into your system just to build up your immune system to it. So you may find that if the treatment is not working for you, the GP might suggest maybe you do go for immunotherapy. And there's another thing that I'm not sure, Trudy, if you've heard of it, but a couple of years ago as well, I came across a patient who said, oh, there's an injection for hay fever. And at that time, I actually was not sure of it. So, and it turned out there is, I'm not sure if you've heard of Kenalog. It's only available on prescription. So Kenalog, Kenalog is basically a steroid injection, which some patients who have severe hay fever, and especially if you have it all year round, some GPs may opt for the Kenalog treatment, where they find out that it actually relieves the symptoms a lot longer than all these tablets and stuff. But you need to speak to your GP first before they will opt for that option. But it was something that actually came across a couple of years ago, which I wasn't sure.
I mean, it is something also worth, as we said, speaking to a healthcare professional about, and also just researching what, first of all, when I say research, you don't Google, okay? Do your due diligence, so speak to people. That is part of research as well. But just finding out what other options there is for you, especially if it's quite bad. If it's just the regular sort of signs and symptoms of hay fever, to be fair, a lot of over-the-counter treatment can actually manage your hay fever symptoms. Before I forget, you said something, and I was like, oh yeah, a few years ago. Did you ever hear about something called the April effect, or I think the pollen paradox? Well,
no.
So this was, I think I heard about this actually a couple of years ago, right? And I didn't necessarily hear about it like that. No one just came to me and said, have you heard about the April effect, Trudy? No, I can't remember what it was. It was someone who said something, and I think we were looking it up with a few girls at work, and we're like, wow, okay, so this is a thing. So basically, there's a phenomenon called the April effect, or the pollen paradox. And basically, it suggests that during hay fever symptoms, the inflammation that is normally caused by hay fever can actually stimulate certain areas of the brain that is associated with creativity. So yeah, so and we did, as I said, we did look it up, and basically some studies have shown that people with hay fever may experience an increased cognitive flexibility and divergent thinking during allergy season. This would lead to enhanced creativity and problem solving abilities. So I know. I was like,
wow.
okay. So basically there's some sort of a relationship between hay fever symptoms and what they do to the brain and your creativity. So as much as you feel like this is the worst time of the year for you because you're going through all this, your brain could be the most creative at this point. So if there's anything you've ever wanted to do, try doing it during hay fever season and see. You might just be the next Elon Musk or something. I don't know. I'm just saying.
Oh, good. Very interesting. Wow. I may have to observe that,
Yeah,
But
do
that
look
is
it
very
up, do read about it,
Yeah.
and maybe try it. If you suffer from hay fever during that time where you're like that, just try something that you enjoy creatively and see if it actually enhances that, because it's, as I said, it has shown some sort of positive effects. So that's a plus, eh? Yeah.
So what would be the take-home message for people with hay fever?
So in regards to hay fever, despite the discomfort and frustration that we all know that hay fever can bring, there is effective ways to manage the symptoms. And understanding your triggers is very, very, very important. I can't stress that enough, because once you know your triggers, you know what to avoid. So implement preventative measures, which is what we've talked about. Steph mentioned how to go about it, using that Vaseline for your eyelids, for your nose. This is something you can look into. And also just utilizing appropriate treatment like antihistamines, nasal sprays, whatever is best to help with your symptoms. These can help to control your hay fever symptoms better. And you also end up enjoying the changing seasons better, because we know hay fever starts from sort of springtime. So the weather is getting warmer, but you're not really enjoying it. So there is ways to go about this so that you're able to actually enjoy the changing weather. And remember that with everything we say, consult a healthcare professional for advice and guidance. So if you're going through, if you're having hay fever symptoms, or you're having any symptoms you're not quite familiar with, or you don't know what is going on, just speak to a healthcare professional. It's very, very important to always seek that advice. What about you, Stephanie? What is your take-home message on today's episode?
Okay. I think you've mentioned most of them, but as you mentioned, hay fever is an allergy response. So do watch out for the triggers that are causing allergy response. That is the main thing, doing your preventative measures to help you, avoid getting hay fever, like not going out when the pollen count is really high, so closing the windows, just avoiding those triggers. Use your preventative measures as we mentioned. Using the Vaseline, which is my number one, and also, do wear sunglasses just to help you from getting in contact with the allergies. So one thing we also said, with hay fever, you cannot cure it, but there are some treatments that can help you relieve these symptoms, so which are available over the counter. Your antihistamines, your decongestants, your steroid nasal sprays, those sort of things will help relieve the symptoms of hay fever. I know hay fever can be very, very irritating. You do have the itchy nose, the runny eyes, the red eyes. Everything is itchy from here and your head, and it can be very debilitating. So I do find that it can be very annoying. So just take your time, try different treatments, and see what works best for you. If hay fever becomes really worse, where it is affecting your daily life, as we mentioned, do seek for professional help so that they will help you. Speak to your GP. who would recommend the right treatment for you. And if you have any more questions, please do let us know.
Thank you for tuning in today. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Remember, a healthy chat is a step towards a healthy life.
If you have any topics you'd like us to discuss, drop us an email at consultationroompod@gmail.com. Our Instagram is @consultationroompod. See you next week.